Dungeons & Dragons has many playable races, 53 to be exact, and a whole hell of a lot more when you start factoring in sub-races. Many players have questioned which is the strongest, which is the fastest, which is the smartest, which is the best for my Hexblade Paladin multi-class that made my last 3 DMs cry. But today we're going to be answering a far more important question. Which D&D race is the best at cuddling? Ground rules. It is to be assumed that each representative of each race is in good hygiene and good fitness. You have access to a queen-size bed with sheets, a comforter, 2 pillows, and a fuzzy throw blanket. The day is winding down, the sun is setting, and you and your cuddle buddy decide to go have a non-sexual cuddle. Oh, and one last thing, this is all based off my own opinions and research. If you disagree with me, go ahead and tell me your opinions in the comments. Dragonborn are 6.5 feet tall and 250 pounds of pure muscle and scales that put their clan above all else. A cuddle session with a Dragonborn will be rough and clingy. D tier. Dwarves are long-lived with a love of beer and gold. Their short stature means they'll beat a little spoon, even if so begrudgingly. They'll complain and drink the whole time, but they'll try not to ruin your fun. C tier. Dorgar are dwarves that have been corrupted by years of getting screwed over by the Underdark. In exchange for their bushy beards, this offshoot of the dwarves develops psychic powers. Although their culture differs greatly from the dwarves, their temperaments have remained mostly the same over the generations of difference. C tier. Elves are either pompous pricks or nature-loving hippies. There is no in-between. Either way, they'll insist on being the big spoon and gently caress you with their slender fingers and arms the whole time. B tier. The Drow are the elf inhabitants of the Underdark. You may remember them as the reason that Netflix removed the D&D episode from Community. A Drow from the Underdark will insist on being the big spoon and then take the opportunity to tie you up and take you back to be their unwilling servant. F tier. Eladrin are the elf inhabitants of the Feywild, and unlike the Drow, they probably won't kidnap you. Probably. B tier. Sea elves are elves that are friends with fish instead of trees. They're like Aquaman when he's the butt of every joke. C tier. Residents of the Shadowfell. The Shadar-kai are elves that are lost between life and death and have lost their fey nature. They'll be moody and glum the whole time. D tier. Gnomes are enthusiastic about every aspect of life. They'll gladly be either the big or little spoon when you cuddle, but if they're the big spoon, they're going to be enthusiastically hugging your back the whole time. B tier. As with all residents of the Underdark, deep gnomes have been screwed over time and time again. They lack the same enthusiasm that the gnomes of Faerun have, but they'll try to respect you. C tier. In all likelihood, the half-elf is going to be the one asking you to cuddle, rather than the other way around. The offspring of two races accepted by neither, half-elves have to learn to be on top of their social game, and that includes platonic or romantic cuddling. A tier. Halflings are legally distinct enough from hobbits that the Tolkien estate can't sue. They'll be happily blazed out of their mind the whole time you cuddle. B tier. Half-orcs are a lot like regular orcs, just with a little bit of human lineage in there to spice things up in their bloodline. They'll spend the entire cuddle session gently holding you and regaling you with stories about how they got each of their scars. B tier. Humans are, well, human. They're like picking Mario in Mario Kart. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just the closest thing there is to a default. They'll cuddle the same way any human would. C tier. Tieflings are a mixed bag. On the more demonic side, they could have sharp teeth or claws or fangs or all sorts of crazy skin colors. But on the less demonic side, there's nothing really differentiating them from humans apart from a few key fiendish characteristics. A tiefling cuddle partner will be mostly similar to a human, but the way they can talk with their silver tongue gives them a slight edge. B tier. Feral tieflings take up more space in the bed than their less demonic counterparts. The wings on their back are cool for flying and all, but they kinda suck when you have to share a space with them. D tier. Leonin are bold and prideful with a grudge against the gods themselves. They will insist on being the big spoon and hold you tightly and closely to their chiseled furry bodies as they whisper into your ear about how much they hate religion. C tier. The satyr are an impulsive bunch. They love spreading their magic in nature, but they also love the comforts of the non-natural world. The satyr will show up drunk to the cuddle session, give it a good 5 minutes, and then go off and do something it's more interested in. D tier. Owlin are relatives of the giant owls that reside in the Feywild. They'll insist that the cuddle session be in the morning so they can spend the whole day asleep with you embraced in their soft feathery arms. B tier if you work the night shift, D tier otherwise. Aarakocra and Aasimar both suffer from the same fate as the feral tiefling. They'd be largely adequate cuddle partners if it wasn't for the wings on their backs taking up so much space. C tier for both. Air genasi are a lot like humans, save for the light breeze that always accompanies them to ruffle their hair. It's a good excuse to bundle up in some extra blankets, but it'll get annoying really quick. C tier. Earth genasi would fare better than their wind counterparts, but lose points to their skin being very dry and stone-like. Not very ideal for spending an evening snuggled up together. C tier. Fire genasi are easily the best genasi to cuddle with due to their higher body heat. It's like cuddling a human if the human was also a heated blanket on a cold winter day. A tier. Water genasi are easily the worst genasi to cuddle with. Water genasi aren't always soaking wet, but they will always feel like they've just gotten out of the pool and haven't had a chance to dry. F F tier. Bugbears seem like they'd be ideal for cuddling at first glance. They don't take up as much space as they should due to their fey magic, and they have long fuzzy limbs that feel like getting hugged by one of those big teddy bears. That is until you realize that their extra strength has to come from dense, rock-hard muscle fibers that make it feel less like you're putting your head on a pillow and more like you're putting your head on a bundle of shirts. B tier. Centaurs are an F tier. If I need to explain this, please try to cuddle with a horse in your bed. Changeling can be whatever you want, baby. They can change their face and persona to fit your ideal cuddle partner, but for the most part, it's not going to be anything more exotic than human. B tier. Fairies are small creatures, which puts their size about on par with halflings if halflings also had large wings on their backs. While they don't suffer the same fate as much of their winged companions on this list due to their size, they are native to the Feywild, which means you will have to be careful with how you answer any question they ask you. C tier. Furbolg are, contrary to popular belief, not cow people, but instead giant folk. Despite being related to the ruthless giants, Furbolg are typically very calm and gentle with a healthy respect for nature. They'll give you an amazing cuddle, but they'll insist that you do it in the middle of the woods. B tier. The Gith split into two races following their escape from the Mind Flayers. The Githyanki are brutal psionic warriors that hunt down illithids with a burning passion. A Githyanki will cuddle you while secretly plotting your death the moment you even think about calamari for dinner. C tier. Githzerai are the more peaceful offshoot of the Gith. They're primarily psionic explorers who honed their abilities by dwelling within the heart of chaos itself. They'll cuddle just fine, but they'll secretly probe your mind for any information they can while they do it. C tier. Goblins are feisty, passionate creatures. Some of them may seem monstrous, but not every goblin lives on Faerun with the sole purpose of being a murder gremlin. Some of them also make jerky. The goblin, despite its small stature, will insist on being the big spoon to an uncomfortable degree. F tier. Goliaths are pretty much the reverse of dwarves when it comes to their appearances. Instead of being short and hairy, they're tall and mostly hairless. The Goliaths are another descendant of giants and are driven by a highly competitive nature. They'll not only give their all to cuddling, they'll keep a mental score the whole time to prove that they won. A tier. Harengon are bipedal rabbit folk that are about the size of a short human. They're soft and fuzzy without the same dense muscle fibers that detract from races like the bugbear. Also, I know about 5 people that would have me tried in The Hague if I didn't put them in A tier. A tier. Hobgoblins are taller, more human goblins whose entire culture is based off a military hierarchy. The hobgoblin will only cuddle with you if it's a direct order from their superior, and for only as long as their superior tells them to. D tier. The Kenku is the only bird-based race that's unable to fly, having the gift of flight stolen from them by the gods. They'll cuddle you with their soft feathers, but the whole time they'll be dreaming about a life among the clouds. C tier. Kobolds are an F tier because you sign up to cuddle with one and end up with 50 little lizard, dog, dragon men all around you. Lizard folk are also F tier because their cold-blooded nature means you're going to be the one supplying all of the body heat. That and they might take a bite out of you midway through. Minotaurs are a lot like bugbear in that they look fuzzy but have muscles made of steel. They also tend to be much larger than other creatures, and tad on top they have pointy horns. D tier. With orcs we once again run into the dense muscle problem and without any fuzzy upsides. But they're less likely to run into the same size issue as the other races, so D tier. Shifters are humans with lycanthropy built into their very DNA. It's no longer a curse and now it's a neat ability. Just hope they don't shift mid-cuddle, otherwise things will get really hairy. C tier. Obligatory, I'm not a furry, it's time for the tabaxi. Humanoid catfolk with sharp claws, the tabaxi are expert bargainers and in more recent source books have been described as having personalities akin to the modern house cat. They'll cuddle with you, but if you move your hand even a millimeter to the left, they'll leave you covered in claw marks. D tier. Turtles have hard shells and frankly don't live for as long as they should. Cuddling with a turtle is like cuddling with a large rock that has a love of leaf vegetables and pizza. F tier. Triton are what sea elves wish they were. They're the Namor to sea elves Aquaman. They defend the depths of the ocean with honor and bravery, and aren't very keen of the surface. That also means the cuddle session will either be underwater or on the shoreline, so I hope you either like sand or have gills. D tier. Playable Yuan-ti are more human than snake, but they still have very snake-like features. They're also more likely to be very emotionally detached and devoted to their snake gods, so they'll spend the entire time trying to convince you to convert to their religion. D tier. Kalishtar are very human-like, except with a connection to spirits and telepathic abilities. They'll telepathically whisper to you the whole time. C tier. Warforged are a mixed bag. They could be anywhere from A tier to F tier depending on how they were built. Most Warforged were built to be soldiers with no thought of comfort in mind, but there's bound to be some out there that have heated seats and a massage function in them. I'm gonna split the difference and put them in C tier. Loxodon are 7-foot tall, extremely loyal elephant people, and you know what they say, a Loxodon never forgets your favorite way to cuddle. B tier. Simic hybrids are the result of experimentation to make the perfect blend of humanoid and beast. Perfect for maneuvering difficult terrain and combat, that is. The large large grafted appendages don't really make them the best cuddle buddies. D tier. Vidalcan are tall, hairless, and blue. They feel emotion, they just aren't very good at sharing that emotion. Vidalcan also tend to understand that they aren't perfect and always try to improve. They're less than ideal, but they'll be there when you need them. B tier. Verdan were the goblin inhabitants of the Underdark, but surprisingly, the Underdark didn't screw them over, because they got screwed over by a primordial entity and fled the Underdark before that could happen. They're a lot like gentler goblins, with an appreciation for other cultures. C tier. Lokatha are fishmen that have a pretty crap history of being forced into slavery by pretty much every other race that lives in or by the sea. As a result, they form very tight-knit and loving communities and care for each other greatly, but they also dislike and will be greatly offended by any non-Lokatha so much as touching them. A tier if you're a fish man, F tier if you're into anyone else. Grung are frogmen with poison skin. F tier. But the question still remains. Which one is the best? Which race is the best at cuddling? We only have 4 races in A tier. Half-Elf, Fire Genasi, Goliath, and Harengon. Immediately I'm going to sort Half-Elves to the bottom of the tier. While they have plenty of charisma, there's nothing that really gives them an edge over the competition. Next I'm going to place Goliaths. The Goliath will ultimately turn everything too competitive and give you a list of everything you did wrong at the end. Fire Genasi ends up taking second place. The body heat is nice, but under a blanket it could easily turn into an oven too quick. And I guess that settles the answer. Harengon is number 1. They're soft and fuzzy like a big stuffed animal and have a range of heights that make them adequate as either the big or little spoon. And ultimately, it would just be like cuddling a fuzzy bunny that doesn't defecate on the bed. But you don't really care which of these is the best. You already had your preconceived notions coming in. In fact, you're already typing a comment about how sea elves deserve to be placed higher than C tier. What you really want to know isn't who the best at cuddling is. You want to know who the worst is. Water Genasi takes the least worst title and wears it in stride. Sure, they're not ideal, but they're the least likely to enslave, murder, or crush you on the F tier list. Turtle takes second. The shell is tough, but they'll probably find a way to make it work. Centaur are third least worst. It'll be even tougher than the turtle, but I'm sure it could work somehow. Up next is Goblins. While aggressive, they probably won't kill or enslave you. Probably. Cuddling with kobolds is like going to an orgy. If you're already an orgy guy, go ahead, but if not, tread wary lest your future be jeopardized. Lizard folk are the last before we enter the bottom 3. There's only a chance that lizard folk does something horrible to you, as opposed to the guarantee of the next 3. Lokatha takes third from the worst. It will probably retaliate against your advances with violence, but it may also just flee. Grung takes second place. Sure, the longer you cuddle with it, the more likely you are to die, but, you know, death is better than what the drow would do to you. Other than the illithids, the drow are the biggest assholes in the entire Underdark. Like, half the problems that everyone else faces are because of the drow. Some of them are kind, but most of them have it beaten into them from birth to kidnap you and turn you into their personal unwilling servant. There you have it. The best and the worst cuddlers in all of D&D 5th edition.